Hey folks, this is Paul talking about A Course in Miracles, which we love, 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 love. Are you in denial or are you accepting? So denial and acceptance are completely opposite. If you accept something, you embrace it totally and you want it and you value it and you're open to it and you allow access to it, you admit to it like a truth. You incorporate it into your being, you embrace it, you love it. The opposite of accepting is denying, and this is a rejection, it's a refusal to admit the truth, it's unwillingness, it's avoidance, it's an attempt to shut it out and pretend that it's not there, trying to be unaware and unconscious of it, even to be dead to it. You can only be either in acceptance or in denial. Now, in A Course in Miracles, we're asked to accept the atonement. So all this means is accepting the truth, accepting reality, accepting God, accepting who you really are, accepting heaven's nature, accepting only God's laws exist. And the only thing that's happened in the separation is that we have gone into denial. We have tried to deny reality, deny who we are, deny God, deny heaven, deny God's laws, deny what's true. And so the undoing of this denial is the acceptance of atonement, or to undo the denial of the truth is to simply accept what is actually really true and what is real. So the whole of A Course in Miracles is basically telling you that you started out in a state of accepting reality, accepting God, accepting what's true. You went into denial, and it has produced a whole state of mind which denies reality and denies the truth of God. And now you're being asked to undo that, to deny the denial of the truth, to deny the avoidance of the truth, to try to re-embrace it and reopen up to it and accept it again. So that's our whole mission. We've just started out in in the truth, and we've gone into what is not true. And now we're trying to get back to what is true. That is the whole entire journey, the whole Course in Miracles, is the fall of man, the ascension back to heaven. It's just a passage of acceptance to denial, back to acceptance. So I'm going to do some diagrams to help you out here. So let's say I'm going to put a separation line here. And up here is the truth and God and heaven. And if you accept that fully, you are totally accepting reality. You're accepting the truth. You're admitting to what's true. You're not in denial. You're not pretending. You're not hiding. You're not avoiding God. You're not trying to be something that you're not. You're being very, very honest, very open, very accepting, very allowing, very natural. But if you go into denial, if you try to hide from this and shut it out, which is what's happened in the separation from God, you go into a state of denial, and then you get everything that is false. And you get the ego, which is also the Antichrist. Not enough space. And you get the world, by which we mean Earth and the planets and the sun and the solar system and the galaxies and space-time. You get space-time down here, space and time. So, if you deny this, you believe in this. If you're saying this is no longer true, something else is true. The opposite, it must be something that's totally unlike this, something that is not true at all, something that has no truth to it, that is zero truth and is completely false. You get the separation from God, and we opposed God. We tried to make something or believe in something that was completely untrue and came up with something that's totally, totally false. This total falseness, in order for you to entertain it and to allow it into your mind and to give it access to your mind and to seem to live it and embrace it and love it and want it, you have to try to invest it with the same kind of acceptance and the embracing and the loving and the valuing and the wanting that you had up here. So you are totally in love with heaven's reality, so the only way to oppose it was to become in love with the opposite, to try to give all the attributes of God to something that is opposite to God. So let's say God is reality, God is true, God is trustable, God is something you want, something you value. You try to give those qualities to that which is not those things. So you try to believe that that which is false is true, and that which cannot be trusted is trusted, and that which is unacceptable is accepted, and that which is not love can be loved, and that which doesn't have immortality can exist forever. You try to give all these, the qualities and the properties of truth, you try to give them to make, be, you try to give them to the things that are not those things. And this is confusion. Because now what happens is, let's say reality is the truth. When you give the truth to that which is not true, you are now confusing the two of them. You're mixing them together. You're saying false things are true, and therefore true things are now false. And you're not distinguishing between what is really true and what's false. That means that you can no longer discern whether something is true or not, whether it's real or not. And that, the word for that is insanity. So by taking the qualities of reality and heaven and God and trying to invest it in and give it to and make real and make true and believe in and give value to and give meaning to want and desire things that are completely opposite to heaven, you have mixed them together. You've tried to merge the truth and the false, and you no longer recognize that the false things are false. You don't believe that they're false anymore because you're trying to give them truth. You're trying to say, I believe this is the truth. So instead of being like, oh, this is bad stuff down here, this is evil, this is the Antichrist, this is hell, this is suffering, this is death, this is the opposite of life, this is all sickness and all torment and unhappiness and being separate from all the good stuff. Instead of recognizing that it is that, and that you wouldn't want to touch it with a barge pole, because it would be like, I don't want suffering, I don't want death, I don't want insanity, I don't want lies, I don't want untruth. I want reality, I want good stuff, I want the happy stuff. because you've given truth to these things, and you've combined the true and the false, and you've made a world where you've tried to deceive yourself into believing that this false stuff isn't false, that the ego is not an ego, that the space and time are not unnatural, that the world is real, or it's even a creation of God, a sacred planet. And we have death in here too, because this whole thing is the opposite of life. It's the death world. That life is up here, life is immortality, life is permanence. Time is death because it changes everything and produces a world that is entirely dead. So all of this down here is dead. It's nothing, because this is everything. But you convince yourself, in order to be able to sort of move your sense of identity and what's true of you and what you want and where you are, by giving truth to things that are not true, it redefines what the truth is, and it redefines, therefore, the truth of what you are. And that redefining of the truth and saying false things are true and bodies are true, bodies are in here too, it sort of moves you into these things, because you're sort of saying, I am this. This is the truth of me. The truth is that bodies are true, and the world is true, and space-time is true, and therefore they're true of me, because the truth is true of me always. So that anchors you into these things. It identifies you with them, because you're saying, this is what I am, this is true of me, these things are real, these things are what I'm made of, this is how I am, this is how I function. I am the Antichrist. I am the ego. So in this movement away from reality, I should put reality up here, I guess. Away from reality into unreality, into an illusion of a world, through the separation from God, making of space-time, inventing planet Earth, making up bodies, all of this fiction that is false, unreal, doesn't exist, is opposite to heaven in every way. All of this shit, it's not just, if you are sane and clear-minded and right-minded and could recognize everything perfectly with true perception, you would recognize that this stuff is unreal, and it is false, and it isn't true, and the body is fake, and there is no world. But because you have gone into it, as Jesus says, you've gone deeply into it, because you are confused about what is the truth anymore, and you've lost touch with reality, because you've given so much truth, reality, value, meaning, importance, worthiness, love, sense of continuation to all this stuff, and have therefore confused what's true and what's not true. You're very confused now. You're not up here just about ready to get out of hell. Let's make sure we say hell, I guess. To get out of hell, you're deep down in the darkness, in the midst of all this stuff. The combination of this and this mixed together in one big poopy soup, whereby you're saying, well, hell is real, and suffering is real, and sickness is real, and bodies are real, and so on. not discerning that these things are false, but instead believing that they are this. Believing that this stuff down here has been swapped with the stuff up here. That you've given all the attributes of the truth to things that are not true, and you've given all the attributes of things that are not true to the truth. The consequence of this is similarly that you're very confused about the nature of God and the nature of heaven, reality, and the truth. Having given truth to the false, you have also given the false to the true. You've swapped them around and superimposed them on each other. So now you've got all this stuff assigned to God. So that now means that you don't recognize God as God. You don't recognize that God is love, or God is power, or God is life, or God is safe, or God is peaceful. You think that God is this. You think God is false. You think God is hell. You think he's your enemy. You think he's evil. You think he's something that you don't want. You think that God is an illusion, that God doesn't even exist. So that's a very confused state of mind. So your mind, in its sanity, should recognize both of these parts. It should know what is absolutely true, and because of this, it also recognizes clearly that which is false. It knows that's false, that's ridiculous, it's nothing, I'm not going to give it any time and attention because it isn't true and it's not possible. And that's totally sane. But in the tiny mad idea, you had this notion that things that were impossible are actually possible. Impossibility is in here. I don't know if I've got any room for the impossible. It's a long word. The impossible, because all possibility is in God. Sorry about my squiggly writing. But so you've given, in the tiny mad idea, you've insisted that the false things can be true. You've insisted that they're real. You've believed in them. You've tried to make them be real. You've tried to give them truth. You've tried to give them meaning. Meaning is up here. You've tried to take all of the attributes of heaven and God and put them in hell, putting yourself there too. And you've overlaid all of that onto this, and you've tried to mix them together and cement them together, bind them into one thing, to have the oneness between the two. And they're supposed to be kept apart. You're not supposed to combine these two levels. You're supposed to keep them completely separate and distinct in order to have sanity. When you don't, and you mix them, and you take the truth and you blend it with the false, you can no longer tell whether this is true or this is true. You can no longer distinguish between them, because now you've got false things that seem like they're true things, and you've got true things that seem like they're false things, and you've got hell, but you somehow think it's heaven. And you've got death, and somehow to your mind it seems like death is life. And you've got the world, and somehow it seems like the world is reality and that it's not heaven. But you think it is heaven, and you want to keep it because you value it, and you think it's God's creation, some kind of miraculous, wonderful thing. You don't realize that the world is a world of impossibility, and you think that so many things are possible and I can do all of these things. Up here, God created you and defined exactly what you are forever. You had no say in this. You are permanently as God wants you to be. But down here, as ego, you're saying, I refuse to be myself as God created me. I am not what God created. I am nothing like what God created. I'm totally opposite. I am the Antichrist, and I oppose my own nature, and I deny my own self. Your soul is up here, and it's getting denied by the ego. And so in this mindset, this is an attempt to focus exclusively and purely on this being all that exists. Because in truth, this is all that exists in heaven. God's creation kingdom is all that exists. But in the separation, in the swapping around of what's true and what's false, assigning the true to the false, assigning the false to the true, you now believe earth, space-time, is all that exists, that the physical and the body is all there is. This is reality, and this is the only place you can exist. This is all that you can be. And so you must be a physical object. And the ego is actually blind to the existence of God and the soul, and there is no communication between them. The ego kind of believes it's the only thing that exists, that it's an only child, that it's God on its own, that it's autonomous and exclusive, and nothing else exists. It doesn't even really believe that anybody else exists. So when you're down here, it's not just a matter of that you're in this place or this state of mind. These are states of mind. It's that you don't recognize this for what it is. You don't want to. You want this to be this. You want hell to be heaven. You want the world to be real. You want the body to be your permanent existence and your identity. You want space-time to be natural. You want all false things to be true. You want impossible things to be possible. So the giving of all those truthful attributes of God to the things that are not of God and are not created and don't really exist, the way that you give those attributes and confuse them and go insane, losing touch with what is real and not even able to discern what really is real anymore, is denial. It's what you use your mind. You're basically splitting your mind, and you're trying to shut out reality, deny that it's there, pretend that it's not true, and that it isn't any of the things that it is, that it's the opposite of those. And if you remember down here, all this stuff is just really non-existence. This is false, unreal, illusion, a dream, a fantasy, a hallucination. This stuff is nothing. This is absolutely non-existent, unreal shit. But you want to give that to God, and now you're trying to say God is all that. God doesn't exist. God isn't real. God isn't true. God is an illusion, and therefore I don't have a father because I've not inherited from God. So that produces what we're calling denial, because you're now taking the nothingness. I have to move my hand because my hand's getting sore. To get a board or something. You're taking the nothingness and you're trying to give it to the everythingness of God, and to say you are nothing, you are not there, you don't exist. In a sense, trying to forgive God, trying to make God go away, to overlook God by saying God is an illusion that I need to forgive. God is unreal. I'm trying to cancel God. So by giving the false to the true, you are saying God is nothing. You're not there. I'm not aware of you. You don't exist. That is another word for that is denial. So if you go into denial by accepting things that are not true as if they're true, and rejecting the things that are true, believing that they're not true, then you make all of this stuff seem true to you. And it seems to be, it seems not to be what it actually is. You become blind to it, you distort it, you deceive yourself. And this is where this now becomes an illusion, that it looks like it's one thing, but it's actually another. Or the way that it appears isn't what it really is. So now you're taking like the world and you're saying the world is heaven, but the world is not heaven. It's opposite to heaven. But if you believe that it's heaven, then you're deceived. You're seeing an illusion of a world that isn't really there. If you think your ego is yourself, you're deceiving yourself and saying, I am an ego, I am a body. And you're not recognizing that these are false and unreal and do not exist and are not true of you. And therefore you think they have truth and they have reality and they mean something and they're myself. So there's that lack of recognition. Remember, enlightenment is a recognition. Being sane is a recognition of what is actually really true and real. Only the laws of God are real. Only God's truth is real. Only absolute permanent truth is real. That which is true has to always be true, otherwise it's not true. If it's conditional truth, if it changes based on conditions, if it has contexts, if it's constantly wavering and changing and it doesn't stay the same, it is not true. Because now it's contradicting itself and it's claiming something else. It was saying this just now and now it's saying this. So it's not really true, is it? In order for something to be true, it has to be permanent. In order for something to be real, it has to be permanent. It can't be fluctuating and going in and out and changing and drifting and being subjective. It's got to be fixed. It's got to be immovable, unchangeable, permanent, forever, endless, eternal. That is why God's eternal reality is the truth. It is absolutely true because it is the absolute truth. But down here, everything is relative. But you keep trying to give a sense of absoluteness and truth and permanence and validity and endlessness to the hell. The endless suffering. So we go into massive denial. In the separation, we at the most sane level of mind, you could say we make up this stuff, but we don't give it any truth. We see it for what it is. From up here, you look upon this mad idea, and you'd recognize it for what it is. The false things are false. Death is something you don't want. It has nothing to offer you. There's no value there. And you would dismiss it. But because you don't recognize it and you've tried to give it truth, you now think all this stuff isn't this stuff. You think there's something else. So this reversal of the true and the false is all that's happened. And it's all that needs to be reversed in order to fix the separation. We just have to get the truth and the false back into where they're supposed to be. What was I going to say? So when you swap them around, all the things that aren't true start to seem true. Now you are attracted to God. You want God. You value God. You think it's important. You protect God. You desire God. You are attached to God. You depend on God. But if you take all of that and you confuse it with things that aren't God, and try to give those qualities and those properties to space-time illusions, you start to want them. You desire them. You're attracted to them. You think they're valuable and important. And this produces what is in A Course in Miracles talks about, and is at first is difficult to understand, that you can be attracted to death. You can be attracted to bodies. You can be attracted to hell. You can be attracted to sickness and suffering. You can be attracted to guilt. And you say, well, why, in your right mind, why would you ever want these things? Why would you be attracted to them? It's because you don't recognize them for what they are. You're in denial. The denial that rejects reality and takes reality's attributes and gives them to unreal things also blinds you to the true nature of the unreal things. It's like, because you try to give the qualities of something completely opposite to their opposite, and now the confusion between is it this or is it that is so great, such a contrast, that all the negative stuff seems positive. All the bad stuff seems good, and the evil seems holy somehow. So let's put some evil in here. So instead of recognizing it as evil, which is an illusion of evil, there's no such thing as real evil, you try to give it reality, and give it truth, and give it value, and give it importance, and make it something you want, and treasure it, and make it an idol, and worship it. And so now, having gone into denial and having switched the true and the false, you've started to desire the things that you're not supposed to desire. You're supposed to want the God and the reality and the truth and the love, but now you're starting to want death and destruction and ego and war and attack and suffering and sickness, and you think that they're going to give you everything you've ever wanted. So that makes you drawn to them, and you want to have more of them. You literally then, because you're confused and you think that these things are real and true and valuable, something you want, you are magnetized to them and you start going towards them. You want to run towards death. You want to run towards the body and make yourself more of a body. You start embracing the world. You want the world. You start decorating the world and trying to make it out to be your home, trying to adapt to the world, trying to invest the world with belief and specialness and love, because you want it to be the opposite of God. And so you're trying to make it be, trying to insist and believe that it is the things that it isn't, to blind yourself to it. And because you believe that it is something it's not, you perceive what you believe it is. So you, by believing that hell is heaven and death is life and separation is union and false things are true and all this, you look at them with a kind of adoration and a embracing and an acceptance. As Jesus says in the Course, what you accept into your mind, you'll make real to you. You'll give it reality. You'll feel like it's special and wanted and valuable to you. And you'll also feel that it's your salvation, that it's going to do everything for you. It's going to give everything to you. It's going to keep you safe. It's going to protect you. It's going to ensure your life and your continuation. Now, this is obviously totally fucking insane, because you're now saying that death is going to make sure that you live forever. That destructiveness is going to be creative. That sickness is going to protect you against the truth of God. In the Course in Miracles, sickness is a defense against the truth. You've misperceived the truth of God and have projected the negative, unreal bullshit onto God, confusing God with what's false. You see the false lies, the sense of evil, the mistrust, the darkness, the unwantedness. You see it in God now, reflecting back at you, and you want to run the other way and hide in a body. And seeing that in God not only makes you afraid of God and makes you want to not love or be God, not be with God or go close to God, it makes you want to go towards the things that you think are the light. You think this is the stuff you love. So you see in God the false that you're projecting onto God, that you believe about God and you want to be true. You're trying to force the truth to be false, and you're trying to force the falseness to be true. You're trying with a lot of effort to insist and convince yourself and put a whole lot of investment into this stuff, trying to make it true, trying to make it be what you want, trying to make it be heaven on earth. And up here, you're trying to invest this with all of this negative shit and saying, well, this is what I don't want, and I don't want to wake up, I don't want to accept atonement, I don't want the truth, I don't want reality, and I don't want to be with God. And that's what the ego is essentially believing and saying. It's saying it values the idea that all of this negative shit that doesn't exist is all that exists, that hell is real, that bodies are real, that this is the only truth, the only reality, and God doesn't exist anymore because God is now death. God has been killed off. God is now non-existence. So so there's what things are. Reality is these attributes. There is what things are not. All unreal, non-existing things is down here. And then there's the distortion layer that covers all this up, that is ego, that is insanity, that is blindness, that doesn't want to look straight at reality and accept it for what it is, doesn't want this to be truth, doesn't want this to be false, and instead wants to flip this around and have this be true and have this be false, and so has this sort of twisting, distorting interpretation of what is really true and what isn't. And that interpretation is perception, of course. So you're trying to make things be what you want them to be, but they are not that. And so you are in denial. Down here is planet Earth. And as Jesus says in the Course, nothing that the world believes is true. So all the sense that the world and the ego and the confused mind, the insane, the desire to want things is down here. And I just remember what I was going to say about sickness is a defense against the truth, because you're projecting this idea of misperceiving God, interpreting God as bad and evil, and you don't want it, as if it's going to attack you and it's going to murder you and try to make you like itself, try to kill you off. And so to defend your life, what you believe is the truth of you and the life of you, your existence, you will reject God and say, I don't want to be near to it, I want to be far away, which produces space-time. It's a gap, it's a distance, it's a sense of not now, not present, the denial of what's present, trying to put distance between you and God in order to save your life from your belief that God is evil and vengeful and attacking and murderous and deadly. What you don't want, you try to run away from what you don't want and towards the things you think you want. But you don't realize what you're doing. What you're really doing, without denial, is you're running away from life and away from health and away from order and sanity and wholeness and happiness and love and peace. You're running away from those things towards suffering, hell, degradation, separation, fragmentation, corruption, decay, loss, attack, murder, and death. And so you kind of inadvertently go into a worse state of suffering under the belief that it's saving your life. It's taking you away from the illusion of God being the bad guy. It's distancing you from what you think is hell and putting you towards what you think is going to save you and is going to protect you, and it's what you want, and it's your safety and your love and your treasure. So you go towards the shit, towards death, believing that it's saving your life. So when you're really insane, you actually make yourself sick and try to kill yourself under the belief that you're saving your life. Death becomes attractive. It seems like it's going to save you, as if it's the only way out, the only way to run away from God who's chasing you is to escape into the darkness, hide in a corner in fear, run screaming, and to try to kill yourself, as if destruction is going to save you from God's destruction, as if destruction is creation, as if your safety and your protection and your home and your where you belong and your sense of permanence, your sense of existing is down here, because you're so confused. You think that this is going to save you, that the world is going to save you. So that's backwards perception. This is false perception. This is insanity. This is sin. This is the idea of being in your wrong-mindedness. This is delusional. It is being in denial. So part of being in denial is that you want something that you think it's something that you want, but it's actually something else. And you don't want to admit to it. So what you're in denial about, you see as your enemy. You're denying God. So you think God is all the bad stuff, all the evil, all the false, all the unreal, the unvaluable, things that you don't want. You view God as an enemy. The ego sees God as its total enemy, hates God, wants God to be dead, and wants to believe that God doesn't exist. In denial, you want to keep the denial and get rid of the thing that you're denying. I'm trying to keep track of what I'm even talking about here. Just gonna close the blinds because it's gonna get pretty sunny in here in a moment. You don't want the thing that you're in denial about, which means you're in a strange position now, because the real truth that you really want to get to and you want to be accepting, you think it's not the truth, and you think that it's your enemy and it's something that you don't want, and you don't even like it, you hate it. So now you're down here in denial, being asked to accept something that you think is the exact opposite of what you want. You're being asked to, it's as if someone's saying, your worst enemy is actually your savior. Your worst enemy is the very thing that actually really is true, and you have to accept it and love it. And you don't want to, because your denial inverts reality and makes it backwards and upside down and inside out, and makes it seem as though the very thing that is actually your salvation is the thing that you do not want. You want the opposite. You want to run away from it. So by denying God, you've told yourself that you don't want God and you don't need God, and you're the prodigal son, and you've run away thinking that you can do better. And so in the world, pretty much everybody has denial. Pretty much everybody is in a state where they don't want to admit that the world is a piece of shit. They don't want to look at the real truth about this level of this lower reality, this system of thinking, which is this whole space-time. It's a mindset, it's a system of thought. They don't want to look at it for what it is. You don't want to recognize it for what it really is. They don't want to admit that it is a sucky thing. That we have made an illusion that has all the properties of hell. That time is constantly changing, and time is constantly forcing everything to change. It doesn't allow anything to be permanent. It doesn't allow you to live forever. It doesn't allow you to have anything that lasts. It doesn't allow there to be life. It guarantees death. Time itself is death. But the world, people in the world do not want to look at this. Because what it means is the world is totally hopeless. The world is constantly at war. It cannot be any other way. You see, up here in heaven, there is no war, there's no conflict, there's no difference, there's no attack. There's nothing can be attacked because it's immortal and permanent. But down here, things are not permanent, and they are vulnerable, and they're weak, and they're destructible and destructive. And there is a constant state of war. This is a battlefield. This is it's a system that is fundamentally, constantly broken. It is riddled with problems. As Jesus says in the Course, the world was made so that problems could not be escaped. Like a closed system of problems, that all the world's roads lead to death. There's a section in the Course called The Real Alternative, which I recommend you read. Goes into this quite extensively, that the world that we've made is the opposite of heaven. It is the Antichrist. It is essentially negative. It is fundamentally unnatural. Everything in it is trying to kill itself. It is a system where problems just happen all the time. Just constant problems, even to the extent that it's built into the materials that the world's made of. Things, the so-called laws of gravity. Stuff's going to fall on the floor. Things are going to break. The materials are not permanent, so they are going to gradually decay and they're going to break. And the machines are going to break down and the clothing's going to wear out. And there's always going to be decay and death. Throughout, it permeates the entirety of space-time, because time itself forces this to happen. And within time, within space and time, there is no escape from it. Every single thing in the world is made of the idea of death. It is destruction. This whole level up here, this level of heaven, this is creation. Course in Miracles says creation is not possible in this world. It is not possible here. This is a world of destruction. It has to be destructive because it has to be opposite to heaven. And the Course talks about how in this world everything takes a direction which is exactly opposite to heaven. And earth is heaven's opposite in every way. It's not just opposite in some ways. Every single thing that you could say about God, about reality, truth, love, peace, permanence, absolute, holiness, innocence, immortality, invulnerability, all the qualities of God and reality. Earth, space-time, hell, has to be, it doesn't have a choice in this, in order for you to make something that is not like reality, that is unreal, it has to be opposite to all these qualities. So then you get a lack of everything that's up here. You get the opposite of everything up here, the total opposite. Not just slightly opposite or similar, but completely 180 degrees absolutely opposite. So heaven is immortality and it is eternal life. The opposite of that is constant death. Space and time. Time is an attack upon eternity. It's the notion that nothing is allowed to ever be permanent, because reality is permanent. So the opposite of being permanent is being impermanent. The whole entire system of space-time is in every way imaginable, with every possible word and label that you can think of, opposite to the reality of the kingdom of God. It is unreal, it is untrue, it is unwhole, it is not innocent, it is uncreative, it is untrue. Everything about it is backwards, everything is inside out and upside down. It's totally false. The people in the world are do not want to fucking look at this and admit to it. If you were to look at this, as Jesus is in that section about the real alternative, if you were to look at this hell that the world is, with its guaranteed problems and guaranteed suffering and guaranteed death, it has to function in a dysfunctional way. It cannot be orderly. It has to be chaos, because heaven is order. It has to be a fundamentally broken, malfunctioning, dysfunctioning, incapable, lacking, limited, broken system. It is Nicole says, without the idea of death, there is no world. This has to fundamentally be a world that is dark and negative and evil. Jesus calls it the Antichrist. All of space and time is a lie. Planet Earth is a lie. The whole system is false. False in every way. Doesn't even really exist. But in the world, us people with our little egos, in our confusion, in our insanity, which is also sin, we don't want to recognize that. We want the world to be something better. We want it to be like heaven. We want it to be true. We want to believe that the world can be free of problems. We want to believe that in the world you can be whatever you want, because it suggests that you're not created by God and you're not permanent and changeless. So you can just reinvent yourself and be whatever you want to be. This is bullshit. The notion that you can, everybody can be whatever they want. You cannot. God created you and caused you to be exactly what you are. You will always be that, and you have never stopped being that. And there's nothing you can do to change this. You cannot determine who you are and what you are. That is up to God. It's part of the system here. The system of truth is a system of permanence. It's God wills that you exist forever in perfection. So you cannot be imperfect, and you cannot be lacking, and you cannot be unworthy. And in the rejection of God, in the denying of heaven, you've denied yourself. You've denied your soul. You've denied who you are, and you've denied God as your Father and your Creator. And it's put you in a position of ego where you see yourself as autonomous, and you think that you have created yourself. And you haven't even really been created at all by God, that you're some kind of illusion of a self. The ego is really the idea of not having a self. It is a lack of self. It's a lack of soul. So in this denial, you believe God isn't your Father. That God, you want nothing to do with God as your loving Creator. You want to believe that God is selfish and special, and you asked God to treat you in a special way. You wanted special favor from God, and you wanted God to treat you exclusively and to give you something that was just yours only. You wanted to have it for yourself, and you did not want to share, because heaven is all about sharing, oneness. So you want to be exclusive. This is an inclusive system, and this is an exclusive system. So you now believe in your distorted taking truth and giving it to lies, taking lies and giving it to the truth, that false perception. You now believe God is special, and that you have a special Father who has created you out of hatred and does not want you. and that you were not created by love, and you don't come from peace, and you are not a part of reality. In this false perception, which is insanity, which also is how the physical world is set up, it's not just a state of mind that's confused about what's true and what's false. Okay, here's the truth and here's what's false, and the mind flips them around and becomes confused about which is which, assigns the false up here and thinks this stuff is true. That mind produced a world in which that is visualized. It's visualized as space-time and the laws of physics, and it causes a world that is false in every way, where the impossible seems to happen constantly. As Jesus in the Course says, the world is false perception. So there's a union between that insane backwards state of mind that doesn't know what's true and what's false, and a projection of that mind that produces physical environments and seeming laws and dynamics and ways that things interact are a reflection of that insanity. As he says, like, the world is a picture of those driven mad by guilt. It's a delusional system. So the whole physical world, the physical material seeming universe, space and time, is an outpicturing of an inner condition of madness. It is utterly backwards. It is taking what's false and isn't true and isn't possible, attempting to give it reality and truth, and therefore making it real, and therefore presenting it to your mind as if it is your reality surrounding you, looking like a physical world, in which the laws that seem to govern the world are absolutely backwards and opposite to the laws of God. We could do a whole video just on that alone. But basically, our insanity has produced space-time, and it has produced a backwards world where everything that shouldn't be happening and shouldn't be possible seems to be happening, and it's the impossible things are the only things that seem to be happening. And now miracles, which are natural and are supposed to be happening all the time and are your birthright, now seem to be impossible. And even in our denial, this reality, which is supposed to be visible to us, the soul never leaves the sight of God, this is supposed to be visible. And in our denial, we've made this become invisible, because non-existence is invisible. It doesn't exist. You can't go there. You can't see it. You've assigned that to God, and now you think God is non-existent and invisible to you. And this has made the illusion of a world seem visible to you. And now you see and hallucinate in your insanity a world that is not there, that you think is there. This is why there is no world. It's a made-up world. It's an insane, hallucinated projection in a mind that is having a false belief, a backwards belief about what is true and what's false. It's out of touch with reality. It doesn't recognize anything. It thinks that everything that it sees is something other than what it is. Only the body makes the world seem real. The world is not real. So when you take something that is not real and you believe that it's real, it's totally opposite to what's true, And that means you're not recognizing it for what it is. And instead, you're falling for an illusion, and you're believing that it's something that it's not. And that belief that it's something that it's not is denial. You're denying what it is, and you're accepting what it isn't, instead of accepting what it is and denying what it isn't. Jesus says in the Course to deny anything not of God. Only heaven and God's kingdom and the sonship is of God. It is real and it exists, and it's all that exists. The illusory world that you made up does not really exist. But when you're in denial, you'll think it's all that exists and heaven doesn't exist. So in this world, the world is fundamentally shit. The world is fundamentally a guaranteed system of impossibility, destruction, death, impermanence, constant unlimited problems, constant war, conflict and attack within itself. It attacks itself and denies itself because it's made of denial. So it's in a state of denial even about itself. Jesus says in the Course, a world that attacks itself and denies its own nature cannot be of God. So you've made a world that is not of God. Earth is not of God. And we're now asked to use denial in a sane way to correctly deny the things that are not true, and to accept and embrace the things that actually are true. So that means, if this is the denial of God, that you deny the denial of God by recognizing that it is false, the world you made is false, and accepting what is real and what is true. Accepting this is accepting the atonement. It is accepting reality. It is being sane. It's in your right mind. It is enlightenment. It is the recognition, the clear, honest, completely direct cognition that this is the only truth. God's laws are the only laws. God's reality is the only reality. God's kingdom is the only world. And all this stuff down here is fiction, a dream, doesn't exist, doesn't mean anything, isn't true, and you do not want it. You see, here's the thing. So long as you believe, so long as you're in denial that something isn't what it is, and your denial makes it look like something you want, you will carry on wanting it. So if you're in denial that the world is hell, and that denial acts like, it produces like an oasis in the desert, like a mirage that looks as if your false perception makes the illusory world look as though it's real. It makes its total lack of value look valuable. It makes something that you do not want appear to be something that you want. So in your denial about the true nature of the world, that the world is all this stuff, and it's not any of this, this false perception of the world causes your mind to believe that the world isn't hell, and it isn't a nightmare, and it isn't meaningless, and it isn't lacking value. and it has things that you want, things that you love, things that you want to keep, things that you're attached to, things you want more of, things you want to get, things you want to surround yourself with, things that you can achieve, including success, including lots of money, including toys and objects, including special bodies and special relationships, including loved ones that you have conditional love about, that you pretend to have unconditional love about. All the treasures of the world, all the new stuff that presents itself as if it's perfect and flawless, as if it's an illusion of greatness, an illusion of awesome and impressive and something to be wowed about and stunned about, something that everybody wants, and everybody's going to clamor over it in Black Friday, and they're going to try to purchase it. Everybody wants to have it, and you want to gain the whole world. All of civilization is more or less, in space-time, it's more or less running away from the nature of the world and pretending that the world isn't this way, and creating castles and kingdoms and cities to insulate you from the nature of the world. This is why we have houses, because you don't like the weather when it gets bad. You don't want to be in the middle of a tornado, you don't want to be in the thunderstorm, you don't want to be in the freezing snow. So you insulate yourself and hide from the nature of the world to create a little bubble that seems as though it's nice and cozy and comfortable and safe and protected. Even though in the Course Jesus says that the cities that you've built have never sheltered you, and the homes you've built have all crumbled, and nothing that you made can escape the mark of death and the assault of time, because even these little fake protective devices are going to turn into rubble because of time is going to kill them. Time will destroy everything in the world because it doesn't allow it to stay in a good state. It says you must change. You're not allowed to stay this way. Even the new stuff, even the stuff that's made of good materials, even the workmanship, even the quality, even the long-lasting, even the really hard, long-lasting, wearable, durable materials will decay and corrode and corrupt and crumble and die. That is the truth about this world. Everything in space and time was made of death, and it's made to die, and it attacks itself, and it changes, and it never stays the same. But throughout the history of mankind and of the solar system and the galaxies, it is all a movement made of denial in an attempt to suggest that the world can be a better place. And you can make it a better place. You can make your life more comfortable. You can find ways to avoid the problems. You can insulate yourself from the weather. You can do stupid, ridiculous jobs that you hate and earn lots of ridiculous fake money, and then use it to make yourself a nice castle with a safe room, and make the walls nice and thick, and make sure that there's like a frickin' vault in there where you can be protected when the bad stuff happens. And this does not stop the bad stuff happening. See, this is the thing about denial, is that denial doesn't actually make something go away. It pretends that it's not there. Even death does not end life. Death is actually just a denial that eternal life is endless and can never stop. Death does not have power over the Son of God. Death cannot cause God's kingdom to be destroyed. It can never die. It can never be destroyed. Nothing can assail it. So denial is actually not You haven't killed off God, and you haven't destroyed heaven, and you haven't broke reality. But what you have done is you've hidden from it. And you've said, I don't want that. And you've given it the falseness. So you're saying, I want to get away from this, and this isn't what I want, and this isn't what I value. And you've turned your back on it. And because of this, you do not see it. That which is false to you, you do not see. It says in the Course. So what you allow to be your truth, you will see. There's so much to this. It's such a simple thing, this denial and acceptance, but it just covers everything. So we're talking about everything. When you're in denial, you're hiding and you're pretending that the thing that you're in denial about isn't there, even though it still is. So you can be in denial that there's your city is going to pot, or your job is going downhill, or whatever, but it's still there. You can be in denial that it's cold outside, and then go outside and find out that it's still cold. So denial is not the actual destruction of the thing that you're denying. It's more personal and subjective, because it's a way of putting you out of touch with it, what is objectively real. So you go into a subjective denial where you believe that the thing isn't there. You believe it's been destroyed and attacked, and that's why you think you've sinned against God when you haven't. But the thing is still there, and it hasn't been changed. So your denial, in a way, validates that the thing that you're in denial of still exists, because it implies that you believe it's there, but that you don't want it. So whatever you're in denial about, you actually are also in support of. This is part of why it's so contradictory and backwards. So you kind of almost are reinforcing the very thing that you don't want. So when you go into denial that the world sucks, you maintain the world as something that sucks and pretend that it doesn't. And I'm not going to, at this point, get into forgiveness. I'm not talking about true perception yet. Because there's far too much unwillingness to look at the facts about what the world is like. We have covered it over with civilization. We have tried to pretend that things are not going to die, and they're not going to decay, and that the physics isn't going to guarantee that things change. So human beings are living in this very head in the sand fiction, fantasy land of specialness and selfishness, and believing you can be whatever you want, and you can have whatever you want, and you can make the world of your dreams, and you can have the relationship of your dreams, and the body of your dreams, and the money of your dreams. And you can basically, this belief that it's possible to make the world a better place. And better would now be classified perhaps as less people are dying, or there's less sickness. That's somehow better. But it's denial. It's a way of hiding from the death and the sickness that's on the doorstep, built into space-time. So it's like we're inside hell. And the people that are in hell, because Earth is hell, the opposite of heaven has to be appropriately named hell, even though it's not fire and brimstone and not what you thought hell might be like. It is the opposite of heaven, so it is hell. The people inside of hell are in denial that they're in hell. And they believe that it's not hell. And they've tried to get comfortable with it. They've tried to adapt to it. We've tried to build little houses on it. We've tried to turn it into a home. We've tried to live with it. We've tried to tolerate it. We've tried to build cities and walls and barricades to keep it out. We've tried to put things around our bodies to protect them even more. We put clothes on our bodies. We put the bodies into cars. We put the cars into garages. We put the garages into the houses. What's next? You're going to put a dome over the city just to protect it a little bit more? As Jesus says in the Course, the world offers no safety. It attacks, it is merciless, it is relentless, it is constantly attacking, constantly destroying. It is uncaring about you. It is unconditional in its constancy of attack. It doesn't give a shit who you are. It has complete disregard for your status, for your money, for your beliefs about your identity, your sense of your body, your worth, your value, anything. The fundamental system of hell does not give a shit about anything or anyone, because it is a system of selfishness, and so it blindly attacks everything all the time. And the people that are in hell on planet Earth, believing that they're not in hell, have a delusional, wishful thinking, a rose-tinted glasses, sense of insulation and denial and pretense and entitlement, and a sense of it being possible to do things in this world that are not possible in this world. And I'm not even talking about miracles. I'm talking about taking a system that is a system of impossibility and staying within the confines of the impossible, but moving the furniture around to preferable configurations that you think represent wonderful possibilities. All the sheep keep getting eaten by the wolves, so let's put a fence around the sheep to protect them with fake safety. And now it may seem as though the sheep can live longer because the wolves can't get through the fence. And now we've used separation and defenses and attack to separate and split the world, which is not positive, to limit the wolves and attack them, and to limit and confine and imprison the sheep for their own good, so that they can now live longer. And we would call this progress and advancement and civilization and being more humane and so on. And we keep trying to find ways to turn shit into not shit. We keep trying to pretend that there is actually a hope in the world, that there is a way for us to get the world to stop being the way that it is. We do not want to look at and accept that the world is fundamentally broken, and it will never, ever, ever, ever stop being this way. It was made not to last, because it was made of destruction. It was made in destruction. It was made to oppose indestructibility, and everything in it is vulnerable and weak and can be destroyed. It doesn't. So what we have is, like as Jesus says in the Course, he's reminding me of that on some of the roads in the world, some of the pathways, some of the routes that you take, it can seem as though for a while there is a temporary illusion of things going well. There's a mirage of an oasis in the desert. There's a reprieve in the attack. There's a seeming lull in the storm. And during this period, it suggests an illusion that the whole system has stopped attacking. That everything's now going to be great, and everything's going to be wonderful, and things have returned to normal, because we think somehow that these exceptions, where the broken system looks like a working system for a while, we think that that's the normal system, that's some kind of higher truth, some kind of higher purpose in the world, some kind of more meaningful way of living. And those little bubbles of things going well, turning out in your favor, things seeming not to be attacked, things seeming to be relatively better, these improvements to hell are short-lived. They're always short-lived because the hell, the time, the space makes sure that they cannot last. So sooner or later, it goes to shit. It comes to an end, and all the things that you had wishful thinking about and thought were going to last and be great and not end in disappointment, were not going to result in a tragedy, were not going to end in death, would last a long time, even if the span of time seems to sometimes be longer. Eventually, it all must die. And we don't want to admit this. Now, I'm not saying that death is real, I'm not saying death is true, or that death is the only option, because there is an alternative. But this world does not offer the alternative. The alternative is heaven. As Course in Miracles says, heaven remains your one alternative to the strange world you made. It's the only alternative. It's the only thing that will work permanently. So in the world, we keep seeking for solutions, answers, salvation, freedom, happiness, rescue, advantage, winning, gaining, trying to gain more than we lose, profiteering, trying to manipulate the world, a fundamentally flawed, lacking, incapable, limited world. We keep trying to turn it into something better, as if we had enough time, thousands of years from now, all this civilization, the attempt to tame the wilderness, to tame hell. We're trying to take something that is wild and unruly and vicious and cruel and disastrous and cannot be trusted and is destructive and harmful and toxic and fundamentally stupid, and we keep trying to pretend in denial that it is not these things by creating these illusions of short-lived, fresh and new and shiny and futuristic escapes from the torture. These little bubbles, these little oases that we keep trying to make in the world, trying to make the world be a better place, trying to become something, trying as if it's just like the world has a potential. And over time, if you give it enough effort and you put in enough polish, enough obsession, and enough time and attention, you can turn the roughness into a diamond. Guess what happens to diamonds? They break and they get lost. And did you really think that the diamond was perfection? Was it permanent? Is it going to last forever? Because we actually kind of believe that these things will. We're sort of a bit delusional. We kind of are like, instead of recognizing that all this stuff's going to just crumble and die, you build an entire skyscraper and are just enamored with how glorious it is. And in that sort of idol worship, that special love, that, oh, it's so wonderful, it's magnificent, it's what I've created. There's an unwillingness to look at other aspects of what this thing is. There's an unwillingness to look and say, well, these parts are imperfect, this is a little bit misaligned, there's already been some broken windows, the foundations are already sinking under the weight. It's only a matter of time until it falls down and destroys itself. You don't want to look at that. At the start, you want to have your nice little ignorance is bliss, pretending that the world has once again come up with an escape from itself, with an illusion of something appearing to be perfect and possible and permanent and invulnerable, like the shiny new babies and the puppies and the kittens and the perfect sunsets and the new toys and the new computer and the new iPhone and all the latest gadgets and the AI and the... We look at them as if they are positive and they are devoid of the signs of death. We're not willing to really honestly look at that and say, everything in the world has the mark of death upon it. Everything in the whole world, without exception, has the laws of death governing it. Time is death. At most, as Jesus says in the Course, outside of heaven there is no life. And outside of heaven everything is illusion. And at best it looks like life. And at worst death. But it is neither, because it's nothing. So even the things we think of as life in the world are not really life, because they're not eternal life. Only eternal life is life. It is immortality. It is perfect continuation. Objects that grow, babies being born, people growing up, animals, plants, forests, oceans, etc. Whole planets, whole solar systems of life is not life, they are forms of death. But if you're in the belief that the world is sort of like this background pool of potential and possibilities, it's just rough materials, it's completely neutral, and you can just make it into whatever you want, and therefore you can make a whole civilization, you can make bodies, you can make a life for yourself, you can make a nice log cabin in the woods, you can have your whole self, whole city, you can have a planet to yourself, and blah blah blah. It's all going to die. None of it will last. So then people will probably say, well, why don't you just enjoy it while it lasts? Okay, well, if that enjoyment is only possible in a state of mind that is insane, that is in denial, that is only able to enjoy it by denying the aspects of it that are true, by denying the death, denying the falseness, denying that by liking this thing you are denying God, denying that there is a cost to valuing the world, that if you value anything in the world, it will take away value from God. It will take away value from yourself. And therefore, by trying to become one with an illusion and trying to make it be something you want and something you value and something you love and enjoy, all the time you are taking that away from real things that you really want and really mean something and really are important to you. So there is a cost to idol worship and to the toys. In the Course it says the teachers of God are willing to give up all the pleasures of the world. You don't have to suffer, but it's a recognition that the world has nothing that I want. The world, that everything in the world isn't only what it appears to be. It isn't just, oh, it's a fresh new plant that's growing with healthy new leaves. It isn't just that. It is also death on a stick. The very same thing that makes the plant grow is the very same thing that will kill it. Time will change the plant and turn it into a grown plant and will then destroy it. And that destructiveness, that self-destructive limitation is built in from the start. Everything in the world has a built-in road to death. Everything leads to death. So what Jesus is suggesting is that we need to try to realize, to not be deceived by forms, not be deceived by appearances, where we think this thing leads to death, this thing doesn't. And he says something about this means that you believe that there are many truths, that this thing is false, this thing is true, this thing is more true, this is more false, the thing that's more true is going to last longer. And we actually divide up the world in this way, and we assign death to some things and say the dead bodies in the ground are dead, more dead. And then you've got the living bodies, and you say the living bodies are more alive. This isn't true. All of the bodies are made of death. They're all limited, they're all rejecting reality, they are all opposed to life. But we don't recognize it because we keep on getting deceived by the appearance of the form, and we're thinking this isn't another form of death. This is actually alive. This isn't another form of death. This has potential. This thing isn't going to break down. It's going to last forever. This thing doesn't have limitation in it. It's unlimited, and it's going to be just great forever and ever until it's not. So this isn't being negative about the world. This is just the way the world has to be in order to be opposite to reality and opposite to the kingdom of God. It is, there was no other choice. If God's kingdom is perfect and permanent, an opposite must be imperfect and impermanent. The world itself doesn't have any say in this. The world did not make itself. The world does not have the causal power to change its nature. As Jesus says in the Course, the nature of the world is devouring. The whole world eats itself. From the larger perspective, we are consumers, consuming consumables who are themselves consumers. It is, the entire system is cannibalistic. The whole thing is devouring, eating, breaking down, decaying, stripping away, destroying. All of your diets are destructive. Um, so we don't want to admit this. The world is heavily in denial that this entire environment is hell. That it is, it's nature, it's built in nature, and the laws of physics is fundamentally making it impossible for anything to last. It forces change against everyone's will. That, as Jesus says in the Course about the body, time controls it entirely. Time has power over the body and forces it to change. And it's because of change that I can even move the body. This is time. This movement is death. But we're so in denial. So many people have taught themselves and taught each other that the world is a great place. The world is not going to hurt you. The world is your friend. The world is a wonderful adventure to go explore and see everything and do everything. It's full of newness. It's possible for there to be something original and different in the world. There is not. Only up to a point can there be an illusion of this is not the same as that, because eventually we're going to run out of options because there's limitation. This is why so many things now are just repeating the past, because the whole system is limited. You cannot change the system. You can't make the system have something that it doesn't have in it. You can't make it work differently. You can't break the rules this way. So we grow up being taught to believe you can be whatever you want. You can have whatever you want. You can go wherever you want. You're free. You are unlimited. Everybody can be the president. You can have the whole American dream. You can gain the whole world. You can be a king. You can be a queen. You can be the ruler. You can be extra special. You can stand out. You can be different. You can be exclusive. You can have a massive stockpile of stuff, whether it's money or riches or objects or whatever, even garbage. Just this incredible society of denial. That there aren't, it's a denial of the nature of the world. It's an insistence, it's an attempt to believe that Earth is heaven, that there's not going to be any problems, things are not going to break, you're not going to be attacked, there's going to be a way to be safe, everything's possible, you're going to find the truth in the world can save you. The world can give you what you want. What you want is in the world. The world loves you. You can find love in the world. Things in the world can last forever. That you'll live forever in the world. Death is not going to happen. That you will never be sick. And the things that you love are never going to be taken from you. You're never going to lose anything. There's not going to be any loss. The people around you are never going to die. These are factually the kinds of beliefs that we all have. Because of our insanity, our total believing that all this stuff is this stuff. The false perception that the body enforces, where it can only look upon lies and deception and believe that it's true. The body looks upon unreality and makes it seem like it's reality. And the whole system of the world has encouraged And this isn't just some one person's fault or even the human race's fault. The whole system of space and time, even without humans, encourages the belief that denial will tell you what's true. And people are very good at trying to adapt to the world, trying to adapt to the hell, trying to make it more comfortable, trying to take away the problems, getting more clever at producing tools that seem to fix problems more easily, that seem to eradicate suffering and pain, seem to come up with new cures and new treatments for sicknesses that always have side effects. They must have side effects because they're never what they appear to be. They always are doing something other than they claim. Including food. There is no perfect food or perfect diet because every single food is poison. All foods will lead to death eventually because they all are they're all parts of the system. They're all forms of self-interest and attack. Like the plants have defense mechanisms and they put chemicals into themselves to try to protect themselves from bugs and stuff, and you ingest this and now you've got toxicity in your system. There is no perfect food. There is no perfect anything anywhere in the world. You are not perfect in your body. Your body will never be perfect. This is one of the delusions in the world. Trying to perfect the body. Trying to believe that you can make it look perfect. You can cover it up with makeup and you can build it up or whatever under this insane delusion that the body can become absolutely perfect. And it cannot. It's not possible. And it's not possible because the world will not allow it. I'll be back in just a moment. Hang on to that thought. So I think the whole world is hugely in denial, and it's because of this denial that it's insane. And what Jesus is suggesting in A Course in Miracles is we need to become willing to look at the things we do not want to look at. We need to become willing to admit that the world is not heaven. To take a good look at the fact that everything always comes to an end. No, and what this means is, logically speaking, if every single thing you do is going to be destroyed, no matter how much passion you have, no matter how much you put into it, no matter how much time you spend on it, no matter how much you love doing it, no matter how much is helping people, no matter what it is, every single thing that you make, everything you build, everything you work for, everything you try to develop, everything you try to turn the world into, it's gonna be destroyed. And you don't want to admit this. So, if it's true that everything in the world will be destroyed, that does correctly imply that there's no point in doing anything. There is no point in trying to do anything in the world whatsoever because it's just going to end in death. This is what leads to a sense of hopelessness and depression. Because if you're being kind of honest about the world's nature, you can see that the world is fundamentally a shithole. It is just a broken system and it cannot be fixed. You will not fix the world, ever. So, because it always destroys everything, after a while, some people start to realize this, that there is no hope in the world. There's no hope because everything that you loved came to an end. Everything you wanted was taken from you. All the things that you valued were destroyed. You lost your house, you lost your wife or your husband, you lost your children, whatever it was. Time and space came along and slapped you in the face and said, no, you're not having this. I'm going to disappoint you. Jesus said, the world has disappointed you since time began. The roads that you built have led you nowhere. The homes that you've built have never sheltered you. The cities have all crumbled. Nothing but you made but has the mark of death upon it, and it was ready to turn into dust, even as you made it. Even from the beginning, it was hopeless. So we keep on thinking that there's a hope in the world and of the world, that if you would just do this, it's going to work out. And you just do this way, or you just use these tools, or you just have this purpose, or you just take this course, or you just do this job, or you just have this goal, or this way of living, or this discipline, or whatever, that it's going to work out and you're going to escape from death. It's all about running away from death and denying that the world is dead. The world is already dead. Without the idea of death, there is no world, because reality in the kingdom of God is the only living world. This world of space-time is a belief in death, the opposite of life. Everything in it is made of death. And the things that seem to live are illusions. So if everything's going to be destroyed, and if the guarantee of death, of destruction, the inevitability of death, is set in motion, even at the very beginning of you trying to do anything, it's pointless. The whole system is depressing. The whole system is hopeless. There is nothing in it to your advantage. There's nothing in the world that you can possibly want, because the truth is that it takes everything away from you. The world is going to destroy your whole life. Nobody wants to look at this. So what Jesus says is a section called The Real Alternative. He talks about this. About everyone has to look at this eventually. Everyone must come to this recognition. It's a recognition of looking at this, the truth about this. Instead of believing that this is true, realizing that the false is false, and space-time is an illusion, and the world isn't real, and the body doesn't really exist, and the world is hopeless, and the world is destructive. The world is pointless, meaningless. There's nothing in the world for you. It takes great learning to both recognize and accept that the world has nothing to offer. Think not that the world you made can add anything to the power and the glory of God and His holy sons. This world that we've made, that we value and cherish, is worth shit. Planet Earth is worthless. The body is worthless. It is utterly without any real value. There's a temporary value if you use it to help you to get out of it through forgiveness and so on, through sanity, but of itself, it is valueless and meaningless. Jesus says the body is hardly worth the least offense. It's like not worth anything. Earth is not a sacred world. It is not a valuable world. It's not special. It's a trash can for people who are eternal beings who want to come and hate for a while and have a place where they can forget who they are, deny God, kill each other, suffer and die. That's what Earth is. It is a prison for the immortal. It is an attempt to suggest that God's children can be suffering and dying. It is hell. It is the opposite of what God wills. It is not a great place to be. Stay away. Don't come to Earth. And this isn't about hating the world. This is about honesty, an honest, truthful, sane, genuine look at the actual nature of the world without pretending that it's not, without pretending that it has redeeming qualities, that it can be saved, that it can be become something better, that you can just do a few things to touch it up and it's going to be better, that you can civilize it, and you can avoid the fact that there's going to be a supernova and it's going to blow it up. Eventually, the planet Earth is going to be destroyed by the sun, the very same sun that gave life to it is going to burn it to hell. This might seem like a very long way off, so you think, oh, that's not even important, not relevant, it might as well not even be true. But it is true, and it's happening now, and it's already progressing, and the sun is already working itself up to get to this point where it's ready to do the world in. So don't be in denial. Don't think that that's not true. When you look at planet Mars now, they're starting to realize that probably a long time ago it had a lot of life. There's signs of evidence that it probably had life on it and water, and maybe there was even civilization there. And it died, and the whole thing has been destroyed, and there's barely anything left. And the people who lived on it would probably have thought, oh, this is great, everything is going well, let's have a party, let's drink some more beer, let's pretend that the world's not going to end. It doesn't affect me now, so I'll just put it off. I'll just be in denial. And it's turned to a ball of dust, an uninhabitable ball of dust that now we're trying to find ways to inhabit again. Like, duh. So what Jesus wants us to do is to have a good, hard look at the utter hopelessness and despair of the world. The fact that in and of itself it cannot save you or give you anything you want. It doesn't have anything you want. And when you really look at it, and you really look at it honestly, without trying to make it be something it's not a pretty place. There's animals dying, there's animals eating each other alive, there's people eating animals, there's plants that are withering and dying and decaying. This is all built into the system. It's not something that you can just cover up with a carpet and pretend that this isn't the law of the world. The whole system of this planet and all the planets and all the galaxies is run by death, the laws of death. Everything in it is going to die. Everything in it is already dying. Everything in it is already on its way to death. All the roads in the world lead to death. You have to learn to recognize this so that you're not deceived by the appearance of certain roads that look as if they're holding promise. that they have potential, that this one's going to work. This road's going to take me to heaven. This road's going to give me everything I want. This road's going to protect me from the world's hatred. This road is going to take me somewhere where I'm going to be rich and famous. This road is going to give me worship. This road is going to make me happy. Every single road in the world leads to death. And if you look carefully at the roads and you're not deceived by appearances, you can recognize in them and see the qualities of not God. You can see that they are limited. You can see their lifespan being short. You can see the materials being vulnerable. You can see the susceptibility to disease and death and attack. You can see the fact that everything in the world is attackable and destructible. You can see this in even the newest, shiniest stuff. Even the gleaming, glittering, jewel-encrusted frame of death that makes certain things look as if they are exempt from the world's rules. And by recognizing that everything is a temptation to believe that the world is not death, when you're not deceived by the illusion that there is hope in the world, when you're willing to stop being in denial, which makes you believe the world's wonderful and great, and you're willing to look at the thing you don't want to look at, which is a picture that your denial says is wrong and bad and evil, because it's true and you don't want it, so you've labeled it as negative. You don't want to look at it, but if you do look at it, you'll find out that there is absolutely no hope in the world. This could cause you to be depressed. It could make you suicidal. It could make you feel as though there's no way out, no escape from hell. However, fortunately, because the world actually is unreal, because it is not true, the hopelessness in the world isn't a real hopelessness. But don't think that that means that there is hope in the world. Don't think that it means the world actually has hope. The only hope is the kingdom of God. It is another world. So there is a real alternative to this world. There's a real alternative to the world we made, the hell we made. The kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, is the only environment in which you are suited. It's the only environment that you belong in. It is your home. It is the only environment that is natural. It is the only environment where you can live forever and be free of problems and free of sickness and free of death. Heaven remains the one alternative to the strange world you made, with its tragic joys. So the hope that you must find, see, what he says is you must be willing to look at that the world is hell. You must not be believing that the world is true, that it's God, that it's heaven, that it's got possibilities, that it has reality, that it has any of the properties of God. You must take all of the properties of God away from the world. That you've taken this and you've put it down here and overlaid it on top of this and confused it with it. You need to undo this. To accept atonement, you have to give all the qualities and the properties of God back to God. They have to be assigned and identified with the thing that they actually are. So the truth cannot be confused with what's false. You have to separate it out, and you have to give the truth back to the truth of God. Only God's truth can be true. Nothing else can be true. So the things that are false must be recognized as false. You've got to be able to look at them and say, that is not true. So there's two steps, therefore. You have to have the willingness to stop being in denial and look at the truth about the world, which is that it is hell, and it is deadly, and it is hopeless. And stop looking for salvation in the world. Stop wanting the world. Stop thinking the world is going to save you. Stop thinking that it's heaven. Stop thinking that it's something that you want and something you value. Stop thinking that it has ever done anything for you, or that it will do something for you that you like. The world must become something that you do not want, and it can only do that if you're willing to recognize its true nature. But looking at its true nature has a risk of making you depressed and hopeless, because that's what it is. But a hopeless, depressing world, the bleak world, could only cause you to be depressed and hopeless if you thought that it's all there is. So if you think this is real and you're still mixing reality with this, and you're looking at its nature and you're saying the world sucks and the world's hopeless and it's bad and it's evil and it's wrong and it's cruel, which it is and always will be. If you've mixed some truth in there still and you think it's real, you will think that this is the only reality. If the world is hopeless and it's real, it is really hopeless. If it's hopeless and it's cruel and it's real, it's really cruel. And now the suffering is real and you can't escape it. So that makes you depressed. And you might as well feel like dying, because that seems to be the only way out. That's why people become suicidal, because they don't see another way. They don't see that there's an option. They don't see there's an alternative. They don't think there is a reality beyond the world because it's been denied. So when you're here in the false and you've given this a lot of reality and you think it's true, and you are believing in the world and you think this space and time is the only reality, you will be depressed. Everyone is depressed in the world to some degree. So what you got to do is take away the reality and the truth and give it back to God. Only God's world can be real and true. Only heaven is appropriately given reality and truth. You take the nature of God away from the world, give it back to God. It uncovers the true nature of the world and lets you see its falseness and its destructibility and its hopelessness without giving it reality and without feeling bad about it and without reacting to it, without becoming depressed and hopeless. Because there has to be some sanity somewhere in your mind, some kind of sense of allegiance to God, some kind of positivity, some kind of holiness, some kind of real sense of what must be true that tells you this cannot be. The reality can't be like this. Reality can't be death. I mean, you imagine that if you think the world is real, you're saying that there is no real truth, there is no permanent reality, there is no God, there is no light, there is no happiness, there is no hope, there is no escape. You become existential and hopeless and depressed, and you want to die, as if this is the nature of things. And you'll accept the world as if this is real. And can you really accept? Are you really willing to entertain the idea that ultimate reality, existence, the fabric of existence itself, is fundamentally a system of destruction? Can it be true that destruction is the status quo everywhere? Can it really be true that ultimate reality has a nature, a set of properties of decay and death and murder and attack and war and conflict? Are you okay with that? Can you feel comfortable with this notion? Something in you says no. Your soul is still active and your mind still has some sanity, and somewhere inside of you, you will not accept absolute hell. You will not believe it. Your mind will not allow you to go that far, to that extreme. You can go pretty far, but there's a tolerance for pain, and it's not without limits. And eventually everybody realizes there has to be a better way, because this, surely there is a better world than this. Surely there has to be a world where there isn't suffering, where there isn't sickness and death, where there isn't a total lack of safety, where there's no problems ever, where everything lasts forever. There has to be a world like that. Because this world is so stupid. But if you keep wanting this world to be those things, you're going to be delusional. This world cannot be those things. Only the kingdom of God can be those things to you. Only God can be pure. Only God can be immortal. Only God can be permanence. Only God can be happiness. Son of God can be happy only when he knows he is with God. You cannot adapt to the environment that you've made. This world is absolutely alien to you. It is alien to your mind. It's alien to how you function. It's alien to your nature. It works totally opposite to how you are naturally supposed to function. Your body is completely backwards and inside out. And it doesn't even show who you are. This whole world is utterly alien to your real nature, and that's why you are not compatible with it, and that's why you cannot tolerate it, and you can't stand it, and you don't want it, and you don't really want to keep it. Nobody really wants the world. You made it by not wanting it. There was some guilt and some stuff in your mind, and you didn't want it, so you pushed it outside your mind and made a world. Through rejection, through the ego's use of projection, and now you do not want the thing you made, and the ego knows that its maker does not want it. So right from the start, you have shitted out the world, and it disgusts you, and you hate it, and you do not want it, and nothing about it should appeal to you if you're sane. And if you recognize it for what it is. Yes, it can reflect heaven. Yes, you can see happier things in it that you put there. But of itself, the world has no meaning and no redeeming qualities. Eventually, everybody has to realize that everything in the world is destined to die. The whole system was set up for failure. All the ways that you thought you were failing personally, it wasn't you, it was the system. All the times that your life screwed up, it most likely was the system. All the times that all your hopes were dashed and the things that you loved were taken from you and all the things that you built crumbled and everything you cherished broke, Most likely it's just aspects of the system, the function of the system, guaranteeing that everything goes to fuck. So the only real hope is that there's a world that isn't like this, and you cannot turn this world into that. So you have to learn to stop looking for salvation in this world. Stop expecting this world to be great. Stop expecting there to be no problems. Stop expecting everything to turn out well. Stop expecting there to be no sickness and no death, because in this world that is guaranteed and forced. It is enforced by the laws of physics. It is a world of death permanently, for as long as it lasts. The real hope is God's kingdom. The real truth is God's truth. The real reality is God's reality. So you've got to stop being in denial about the world, admit that it sucks without condemnation, just an honest, truthful, non-judgmental recognition of the way that it is will reveal to you its true nature, which is that it is very false and very unnatural and very alien and very alienating. And then move on past this bleak, horrendously depressing, hopeless picture to the real alternative. See, once you recognize that the world is a piece of shit, you will not want it, because you can't possibly want and feel desiring of and treasure and value something which is so blatantly fucked. Something that you recognize is utterly impossible, that it is made of nothing, that it has no value and no meaning. You can't want it. It can do nothing for you. You have to realize the world holds nothing that you want. Once you've recognized it for what it is and it's shown its true colors, which is potentially very depressing, you have to move past that. Everybody has to get to that point, and everybody has to move past it to the real hope that because you don't want the world, and because you recognize the world can't save you, and the world is not going to turn out well, and it's all going to die, and it cannot last, you will lose your faith in it, you will lose your trust in it, you will lose your valuing of it, and you will stop wanting it, and you will turn your back on the world, and you will face God, and you'll say, I'm coming home. I want the fucking real stuff. I want the world that is safe. I want the world that is going to protect me. I want the world where I'm never going to die. I want the world where I'm going to have permanent, eternal life. I want the world that God has created for me. I am willing to accept reality. I want the real world. I want heaven. I want reality. I want to accept what God has given me. I want to be attuned with God's laws only. I want to be under no laws but God's, and I want to not be in any way influenced by, imposed upon by, given to, or taken away by the world. So it's like when you see just how fucking shit the world is, in truth, how hopeless it is because it's so limited, how it always will fail. And you take the rose-tinted glasses of denial off. Then you will stop denying heaven, and you'll start swapping back around the false and the true, recognizing the world. The world has all the false properties. This is the truth about the world. It is hell. It's a dark, depressing, space-time nightmare, antichrist impossibility that you don't want, and you're willing. It becomes really, really clear just how evil it is, how wrong it is, how unnatural, you will not want it. You will run away from it into God's arms. This will motivate you. You'll only want to go and choose what God's offering when you're very, very sure that the world is not offering it. When you're confused and you believe that the world has hope and it's giving you stuff you want and all this, and you're insane, you will stay in the world, you'll keep the world, you'll want the body, you'll keep trying to make a better life, and you'll keep being disappointed. And then you'll die. When you realize the world can never, ever work, and everything in it dies, you will say, fuck this, I'm out of here, I'm going home to God. You'll turn away from what is now very, very obviously impossible and nothing. Realizing that you had given up everything when you left God, when you denied your inheritance, and now you're willing to accept it again, and now you'll open up to accepting atonement, accepting the truth, accepting reality, accepting God, accepting yourself as you really are, accepting that you're not a body, accepting that the body is nothing like you, accepting that you are alien to this world, that your nature is not the nature of the world, accepting God's truth as the only truth, God's laws are the only laws, God's reality is the only reality, and God's world is the only world that really exists. It's the only world that is hopeful. It's the only world where promises are fulfilled. It's the only world where there's no disappointment and no death and no destruction, because it is the creative kingdom of God. You will want that very, very much when you realize that you don't want the world. But you can't get to where you don't want the world while you're pretending that the world is heaven. So this is what we have to do. We just have to sort out what is true, what is false, reassign the truth to God, assign the false to the world. Jesus says the only thing you need to do to give up the world is to recognize that the one that you made is false. Once you recognize that it's false, you will just forget the world. And you'll turn around and you'll go back to God as the prodigal son and be embraced and loved and live happily ever after. Guaranteed eternal life and immortality forever. That is God's promise. That is what He has already given you. You tried to deny and pretend that you don't already have. It has not left, and it's still yours. You are still as God created you. You are still in the kingdom of God. You are still a part of God, and you are still perfect, flawless, invulnerable, immortal, endless, and eternal. You will live forever, and you will never die. You will never be destroyed, and you will never be attacked. You are safe. Safe in God. You've just been dreaming of exile. Come home. You have not found your happiness in foreign places and in alien forms which have no meaning to you. Though you sought to make them meaningful, this world is not where you belong. You are a stranger here, but it is given you to find the means whereby the world no longer seems to be a prison house for you or anyone. through forgiveness. Come home. God is asking you to come home, back to reality, to wake up to the truth, regain your sanity, remember what is true, and be able to discern what is true, to not be confused, to accept the truth about yourself. I am still as God created me. Only the kingdom of God is real.